I'm in my exorcist hat. Well, it's Saturday morning cartoons, and what better thing to talk about than Halloween and kids and witchcraft and Satanism and magic and things like that. It's also Saturday, so Svenguli's on tonight. But at this weird time of the year, when the veil between the dimensions and the afterlife and the world of spooks is thin, Constance and I last night prepared ourselves for this hallowed Halloween time, and we watched the first game of the World Series. It was pretty good, actually. And the only time we watch Fox is when we have to watch the World Series on Fox. Anyway, I know that sounded a little flippant and everything else, but I'm trying to make a point here. We have one child, one son. He is so good that we figured there couldn't be a better one, so that's when we stopped having children, because he just had to be the best child in the world, and he still is. But he's 50 years old now, and in February he's going to be 51. And we're so proud of him, man. We're proud that he's the best DuQuette there ever was, okay? As flawed as he may think he is, he's still the best DuQuette that there ever was. And he's living in Macau, China right now, where he teaches at a university, and we're so proud of him. But I want you to imagine what it was like for him growing up in probably this weirdest, most eccentric, goofy, magical house in the neighborhood, at least, okay? It's Southern California, so everybody was a little crazy. But we were a little extra crazy, okay? And it could have easily gone, terribly wrong. I think if we would have, handled our home life any differently than we accidentally ended up doing. And yes, of course, we celebrated Halloween. Halloween is great. And when Constance and I were kids, Halloween was a wonderful, safe experience. We'd go out with pillowcases and come back an hour later and dump a full pillowcase of candy on our bed, and then go out 3 more times and fill it up again. It was glorious. It was wonderful. And if you ever have a chance to see a few scenes from, I believe it's Meet Me in St. Louis, the old movie with Judy Garland, and to see what Halloween was like in the late or in the early 20th century. And that's pretty much how it was for us growing up in Nebraska in the 1950s at Halloween. And nobody was worried about Satanism and things like that at the time. But anyway, I recall a couple of our most favorite Halloweens. We went out. Jean-Paul our son wanted to, we saw the movie Gandhi. And the year the movie Gandhi won all the Academy Awards, Jean-Paul wanted to go as Gandhi. And he was a very, very skinny kid, and very lanky and kind of tall, and we whipped him up in one of those Gandhi type loincloths, which is very chilly. And he came as Gandhi, and he delighted everybody who opened the door to see Gandhi standing there with his staff and the little glasses and half bare chest and everything else. And almost everyone that opened the door and they screamed, "Gandhi!" And it was a thrill. And we would always put, or we'd get a big pumpkin, and Constance would carve the pumpkin with a big, terrifying-looking face, but with a real wide open mouth with broken teeth. But we'd save all of the guts of the pumpkin, and then we'd set the pumpkin on the porch, and then we'd spread all of the seeds out of its mouth and onto like the pumpkin had just thrown up. And we called it Barfamet, and delighted the neighbor kids with Barfamet. And it gave us something to do with the seeds. Anyway, my point is, Jean-Paul grew up to be a pretty wonderful, balanced, productive citizen, coming out of a very eccentric family. And but we seemed harmless enough, and so we were sort of the center of much of the after-school activity for him and half a dozen of his school chums, and we more or less raised them too. We're still in contact, I think, with all of them, who we can sort of consider our stepchildren. Anyway, the point is, things are different than they were when Constance and I grew up. Things are different than when Jean-Paul was growing up. But things are always different, and they're always changing. And people are still having children, even with the terrible uncertainties of the present time and the possibility of an even worse future. And so people are of course concerned about, how do you raise? I'm interested in magic. I'm interested in witchcraft. I'm interested in this whole wonderful, colorful spiritual art form. But I'm still having to raise a family in an environment that is not always welcoming to this lifestyle. And people are saying, how do you raise kids? How do you maintain a balance? How between your magic and stuff? And I answered a couple of those questions in answering emails and stuff that I sort of included in Ask Babylon. And so I'm just going to briefly, for Saturday morning cartoons, share a couple of my answers to questions like that. Here's one. I'll just summarize the question. How do you balance magical study and raising a family? And he mentions how, I appear to be normal and the family seems to be normal, but that I write all this esoteric stuff. How I answer, you ask an excellent question, but I'm afraid you've begun with a defective observation. I don't have the whole thing figured out. As a matter of fact, I should start every one of my little talks by saying that. I don't have the whole thing figured out, okay? I did not have it figured out in my youth. I presently do not have it figured out, nor is it likely I will ever have it figured out. As a matter of fact, the older I get, the less about life I seem to understand, and the less important understanding it all seems to be. I must also add that the older I get, the more I simply appreciate the entire experience for whatever it is. My attitude might be the result of creeping senility, or it might be the onset of a degree of illumination. I once upon a time convinced myself was the only goal in life worth striving for. Perhaps senility and illumination are one and the same thing. Please forgive me, but to address your question, I'm going to cut and paste, a little clip from something I wrote at the opening of one of my books, and for a little speech I delivered to the OTO National Conference. I hope it'll be helpful. And I read this little clip, and I'm going to share it with you right now. I'm not a wise man. I'm a lucky man. To my tree of life should be added a fourth pillar, the pillar of luck. To the mystic formulas of INRI and LVX and NOX, I might add FELIX, the Latin word meaning lucky. Because even though my life might appear to be characterized by a series of wise actions and decisions, it is in reality merely peppered by freakish moments of unbelievable good luck. In the East, they would call my lifestyle householder. I'm married and have for my entire adult life endeavored with varying degrees of success to provide a loving and stable environment for my family. Things have worked out pretty well, but not because I'm wise. In truth, throughout the years, I've been lucky to have a sainted wife and beloved son who have provided me with a loving, stable environment. I wasn't acting wisely 42 years ago. Well, I don't know how many years, 1970. No, 1969. I wasn't acting wisely 42 years ago when I took far too much LSD out in Joshua Tree National Monument and vowed to multiple rising suns that I would not return from the desert until I was a holy man. No, this is still 1966, I think, or 7. Later that same day, it wasn't wisdom that oozed like melting psychedelic wax down the wallpaper of that little beer bar in Costa Mesa as I pondered the nature of space-time and suddenly realized the unescapable rightness of spending the rest of my life with Constance Olson, my high school sweetheart. And it wasn't wisdom that sent me careening past the pool table to the payphone by the pinball machine and phone her in Nebraska to ask her to marry me. I think, however, it was wise that I waited till our 20th anniversary to confess that I proposed to her while I was frying my brains out on acid. Fate, coupled with a conspicuous lack of ambition, has conspired to make our lifestyle one of genteel poverty. Well, not always so genteel. We've never owned a house, a new car, or a credit card. Still, On the other hand, we've always lived in moderately affluent communities and safe neighborhoods. And even since our move to Sacramento, we could say the same thing. We've always owned old cars. Presently, I drive a 1984 Volkswagen. We've always owned old cars that usually get us where we're going. Our bills consist exclusively of the rent, the utilities, and health insurance. Our only expenses are groceries and gasoline. Our only debts are those we can never repay. Debts to dear friends and brethren for treasures of love and support. Such kindness has allowed us to travel the world and to do many things we could not afford otherwise. Some people say that that's a miracle, and I agree. Miracles are part of my job. And I'm a magician, and I'm very, very lucky. So that's that clip I included in this answer. So there it is. I know it's probably not the kind of response you wanted, but it's the overriding answer to your question. I'm the laziest man in the world. I'm so lazy that I cannot abide expending 1 ounce of energy or performing 1 iota of labor that is not in some way an expression of my passion for enlightened happiness. Perhaps looking at it from the outside, that might seem like a tour de force that masterfully balances family and esoteric study, career, and magical practice. But what's really going on is me being almost pathologically selfish and lazy. In fact, until you brought it up, it never occurred to me that there was any balancing act going on at all. The school plays, the PTA meetings, the lousy jobs, the bills, the illnesses, the landlords were every bit as much a part of my magical life as the evocations, invocations, and initiations. In fact, they were all initiations. Joseph Campbell said it all when he said, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. Name withheld. That's how I address follow your bliss, name withheld. And the balancing act will take care of itself. That's about as wise as I can wax 10 minutes before going to bed. I hope this has been helpful. At least I hope it made you smile. Finally, a quick one. Is magic harmful to children? And I'm going to read the full question because it's pretty indicative of people getting into magic and raising a child too. My wife asked me a question about the Necronomicon the other day, and she's been doing angel magic through talismans and has had little success. So she intends to use the Necronomicon. Poke Runyon has a wonderful song called the Necronomicon. It's almost a rap song. It's very cute. She asked me if it would be dangerous with a small child in the house, if even it works. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, as I've never used that mythos. I have read the book, but I don't know if it works. Could you offer some opinions or advice about the system? Have you ever used it? Does it work? Is there any danger to it, especially to our daughter? Remember from your books, you use Oh, I remember from your books you used the Goetia when your child was young. Sure, I used his bedroom as the evocation temple while he was out in the living room playing with his trucks. Okay. Would you have used the Necronomicon instead? Name withheld. Dear name withheld. I'm really not trying to take the color and romance out of magic for you, but you should know that the so-called Necronomicon that's being sold today in various editions was artfully created in the late 1970s by several people known to myself. In fact, my son has a signed first edition from one of the participants in the project who is a family friend. That being said, the Necronomicon, when used properly, can probably be as viable a system of magical evocation as any number of ancient grimoires. Does that surprise you? After all, even the books of the classic Key of Solomon had to be created by somebody. Magic isn't harmful to children, but parents who behave over dramatically spooky, fearful, and superstitious often are. I did lots of magical rituals and ceremonies in the house when our son was growing up. I even evoked spirits in his bedroom, with him out of the room, naturally. I did not, however, perform serious magic in front of him, with the exception of saying will before eating and resh at sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight, and us going to Gnostic Mass. Neither did Constance and I attempt to turn him into a little magician. I think it's absolutely shameful to see parents who themselves do not yet have an adequate understanding of magic or the nature of their own spiritual explorations, trying to indoctrinate their kids. When Jean-Paul was growing up, Constance and I just tried to be as normal as we could. Kids like normal. But that doesn't mean that normal can't be fun, colorful, and interesting. We didn't make a big thing about how different we were because we didn't believe in Jesus like the neighbors do. In fact, we exposed him to as many religions and spiritual philosophies as his age could handle. Kids are smart. They can see through Christianity, but they can also see through you and me. Best to teach by example, the example of your own happiness. If your magic is not making you happy, your kids are certainly not going to want to embrace it when they've grown. Okay, off my soapbox. Got to get ready for Monday night class, my best. That's my little talk for today, for Saturday morning cartoons. And we'll see you tomorrow for Sunday school. And I'll hopefully wear another hat. Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.